So let's get to RLIF, and I shall present to you what RLIF is all about. I've been developing RLIF in the last 6 years, and I have been quiet, being careful not to be too far ahead of my time. And back in the day when fertilizer nitrogen was cheap, it wasn't that much of it wasn't a great opportunity, but always the sustainability side and the efforts to reduce nitrogen are very valid and have been growing. So RLIF, just to keep it simple, is a technology that is sprayed on plants and is able to capture nitrous oxides, so air pollution, and break it down to plant feed, as I call the people that don't know much about agriculture, but pretty much nitrate, and that happens on top of the leaf. So to start with the problem, why RLIF? You know, why has the why do we develop this? So there's the greenhouse gases, which is carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, N2O, and these are basically the culprits for global warming. So whilst everybody is talking about carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide is the focus as when we're talking calculations, so even methane is translated to carbon dioxide equivalent, nitrous oxide is one of the major polluters, and the reason for it is because it persists in the air once it's produced for over 120 years, unlike carbon dioxide or methane, which less time. And agriculture, having been a heavy user of nitrogen fertilizers and continues to be, is actually responsible globally for 20% of the greenhouse gases produced. And actually of those 20%, 70% is nitrous oxide, directly linked to nitrogen. And so when you apply nitrogen fertilizers in any form, pretty much in the soil, the bacteria will break it down and they will produce nitrous oxide. So it's a natural process, and doesn't only come from the fertilizer, but also comes from the breakdown of organic matter. So in forests, and land, I mean, from a scientific point of view, scientists have been looking at this, the release of nitrous oxide from grass, for instance, because that's high in organic matter, for the last 60, 70 years. And then we have the nitrous oxide as a whole, which is responsible for 26,000 premature deaths in the UK alone. So that's why we're trying to do something about it, and is both reducing the amount of fertilizer that is used, so that we reduce the source of the problem, but also because RLIF has the ability to capture that nitrous oxide and convert it to nitrate. That is the unique point about this technology. So just to bring it into perspective, fertilizers that are stabilized, they'll still produce the same amount of nitrous oxide because eventually they will break down. So if you are looking at 1 month release of nitrous oxide, a stabilized nitrogen might have a reduction on that, but overall, in the longer period, that nitrous oxide is still produced. So another, like bacteria that produce nitrogen, again, they produce nitrogen, but they don't have an effect as we do on the existing levels of the atmospheric nitrous oxide. So that's the unique point about RLIF. So from an agricultural point of view, we've got the soil health. So using less fertilizer, or the long-term use of nitrogen that is synthetic, has deteriorated soils. We know that. I think Australia apparently has got 50 years left in the soil to be still productive. So climate change also is causing extreme weather events. We have we're experiencing this, and there is also a link to the subsidies now that are closer to ecosystem services. So they want the farmer to be the provider of ecosystem services, and that's how they can reflect receiving some subsidies. So that is something that we're also tapping in. And of course, the high cost of nitrogen fertilizer, inefficiency. I mean, from an economic point of view, you think that in our lives, who buys something that will waste half of it, basically, and you put 200 kilograms of N, knowing that 100 kilograms is going to just be lost. So there is a change that is required, innovation to be adopted, and that falls what everybody uses these days, regenerative agriculture. So what is RLIF? RLIF is a photocatalyst, and a photocatalyst is a semiconductor or a mineral, a nutrient, an element. So zinc, copper is also photocatalyst, but we use the most available, most potent and safer, which is titanium dioxide. So titanium dioxide have been studied in the last 100 years, so we know very well how it works, but the key point is that it works under UV light. So all the studies and currently is used in many industries, in filters. It can clean water, it can clean the air, but typically that happens under UV light, and UV light is a high intensity light, basically. And once that light shines on the photocatalyst, we've got the production of electrons and holes. Let's call it surface charge, and it's that surface charge that is expended to react with other chemicals and break them down. It's basically a catalyst that works with light, photocatalyst. So the clever part of the innovation of RLIF is that we have a process that has been developed and patented to in simple ways bend the structure of the photocatalyst so that it can work under normal light. So basically something that could only happen in a closed environment now can happen outdoors. That's our innovation. But it's not just that, because there is a cost attached to it. So a process that is called doping, basically. So you infuse minerals into the structure to enable it to work under normal light. That, if you look at some of the methodologies, they can cost £1,000 to produce a gram. What we have done is shorten the process so that we can actually make this available to an industry like agriculture. We are using 500 grams per liter, and I'll explain later how it's used, at 2 liters per season, 1 liter at a time. So overall, we're using 1,000 grams per hectare. And there's very specific, the specifications of the product are very important. There's a specific particle size. We don't go to nanoscale, which raises issues with any material. And we don't want the material to be absorbed by the plant. So we want to sit on the surface, and this is where the catalysis happens. So we prepared the photocatalyst, the titanium dioxide, after the process, into a suspension concentrate. I think you'll be familiar with the term. It's not water soluble, it's not reactive, and pretty much it can be added into the tank mix and sprayed onto the foliage. And once it's on the foliage, that's what it does, is absorbing energy from light, daylight. Don't think that it has to be sunny for this to work. A lot of the work that we've done is actually on a dull day, or representing a dull day. And it's quite simple to measure the nitrate that is produced. And it doesn't have to be on a crop, actually. So you can spray wood, you can spray glass, any surface, and as long as it's exposed to light, then it will work, and it will break down nitrous oxide to nitrate. And this is why, you know, you wouldn't put it on roofs or you wouldn't put it on roads, because the nitrate that is built, it's a source of pollution itself. But what a beautiful thing to have plants receive the nitrate, because they can utilize it. And the nitrate, if you think of a chemical structure, the nitrate is built on that structure. So as the nitrous oxide break down, the nitrates will be attached to that photocatalyst, and that is they are attached as crystals basically. So we need a bit of moisture for these crystals to wash off or solubilize and being able to be taken by the plant. So typically during the day, whilst we have the light, that photocatalyst is built up with nitrate. You've got to be careful not to think that this is masses of nitrate built on the foliage that can cause a problem. It's actually, on an average day, we have something like 200 grams to 400 grams of nitrate produced per hectare. So it's quite a small amount actually. And the photocatalyst, it's spread nicely on the foliage, so you don't have any points of concentration of the nitrate that could be toxic to the plant. So the morning dew typically, or rain, or actually a day with high moisture, you probably seen nitrate absorbing just moisture and solubilizing, becoming a droplet. So that's what is happening, and that basically cleans the photocatalyst, and that means that the next day, as the sun or light comes out, then that continues to work. So R-leaf provides nitrate to the crop on a small amount and on a daily basis. And of course, as 30 days go on, some of that photocatalyst will be lost. We've actually recovered 80% after 6 weeks on the field, and we've done a lot of simulation work. We've got stickers to make sure that stays on. Ideally, it's sprayed with other material because that helps. So as a tank mix where you've got fungicides, adjuvants, that supports the stickiness and spreading on the foliage. So by no means we want R-leaf to be applied as on its own or as a separate application, unless it has to be. So simple application to the crops. Most of the work that we've done has been on wheat, so we understand wheat very well. Where we've seen where we've actually had a reduction in nitrogen, we have a better effect. So, and you would appreciate that, if you have a plant, a crop that receives 240 kilos, then more nitrogen, gets to that peak, the response curve of nitrogen. So we're not going to see a lot of effect, but a reduction of 20 to 30%, then this is where R-leaf can show that we can compensate for that potential yield loss. And it's finding the sweet spot between how much yield we can compensate, how much the nitrogen can be reduced, what is the value of that reduction, the cost of the product, of course, and also that balance in the yield and cost. We've got a calculator which you can use from the data that we have produced, and we're producing more data this year. And just, I think it's a good point to say also that the development of the R-leaf has been supported by Lincolnshire Council through some grants, Climate Kick, the European Union, the EIC Accelerator, the Innovate UK, together with DEFRA, and recently we also have Breakthrough Energy, which is a fund for sustainability by Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and Richard Branson. So the big guys are involved. They gave us a substantial amount of money actually to test it in more crops, getting into the US, South America, and the Innovate UK has given us another substantial grant actually to do more work, and that's more on the scale up, getting new formulations, testing the reduction of nitrous oxide outdoors. So there's a lot more to solve basically for it. And you will see that on the presentation it says R-Leaf creates carbon credits and increases plant yield. So the carbon credits is something that is coming through. We've been working with SustainCert, who is an independent body and auditor, and they're guiding us as to how we can put together a methodology. So basically a farmer can use R-Leaf, and because they use R-Leaf they can get carbon credits. And it's not because of the reduction of nitrogen, there's other methodologies to do that, it's because of using R-Leaf. And I'll show you a little bit later as to what we validated today. So the fact that we can put it on any surface, I put there that every leaf can be an R-Leaf, and as a matter of fact we're using it on grass, we use it on professional turf as well, green walls, green screens, so we've got some high profile accounts in London trying to clean the air. So what is R-Leaf? Already explained, but this is the picture where we're saying the electron and holes. So we have the material, the titanium dioxide stack on the foliage, the nitrous oxide is in the air. I just want to clarify, because I had a lot of questions about, obviously if there's no nitrous oxide at all, then you're not producing any nitrate, that's clear. However, because air mixes all the time, there is a background level of nitrous oxides, and that includes NO, NO2 and N2O, and typically we've been working on these levels, so we're not aiming for converting the nitrous oxide that is produced by the fertilizer that has been applied, but just purely working on the background levels. So that needs to be clear, and we've done some work in the most remote places in Ireland, for instance, on some turf, and still there's high levels of nitrous oxide, so that we don't need to take into account any areas that don't have nitrous oxide basically. So the electrons and holes that are mentioned, that's the chemistry, that the surface chemistry is produced, and basically superoxide anions and hydroxyl radicals, and this is the reactive species that the photocatalyst produces, and this is what breaks down the nitrous oxides to nitrate. So I hope that's clear. I think you will have this presentation recorded. Well, it is recorded, so you will have it. You need to refer back to that. So what are the benefits? I've separated the benefits into farming benefits and economic benefits. Economic is the reduced nitrogen fertilizer, the net zero supply chain. So we work with Tesco. We won in 21 the Agri Tea-Jam competition. You might have seen on national news that they're testing, they're instigating the largest trial in the country to reduce nitrogen fertilizers, and R-Leaf is a solution within that. We're working with Branston, we're working with Hunterpack, with Clemens, Southern Eastern Farms, some others as well. So it equates to around 200 hectares of trials where we're reducing nitrogen decision and see whereabouts is the replacement that we can do in a number of crops, as I've mentioned. So we're going to vegetables, root crops. Unfortunately, not so much with cereals, but we're working with Marks & Spencer's with that, M&S. We've got Hovis on board, so we're doing a lot of work on cereals to demonstrate that we can turn lines like the Hovis, bread makers, into net zero products. They're very interested, they're very excited. We try also to understand who is going to pay for that value creation. And just to introduce you a little bit to the carbon credits. So typically the carbon credits are owned by a farmer, the landowner, and what you do is you claim against a methodology that's been approved and launched with either the likes of Gold Standard, Vera, and Region Network that we're actually registering with. And so the farmer or project developer will go against that methodology to claim the carbon credits because the farmer has used RLEAF. That's how the benefit is added. The issue becomes where if Tesco, M&S, Sainsbury's want to absorb that greening benefit of the supply chain, they have to buy the carbon credits. So that's an easy link. But there's another initiative that is called the Value Change Initiative, and that means that a project is built with all the partners, including the packers, and then the value created is absorbed within that supply chain. Now again, who pays for it, and pretty much in this case, who pays for the RLEAF, that's something that all the supply chain can contribute towards it, and the money, the value created can be shared. A direct saving because of the reduction of fertilizer with the current prices, and we've got a calculator for that. Obviously ticking the box for subsidies, and DEFRA is well aware of RLEAF because they have supported it. So that's, that hopefully will be part of policy in an accepted way. The carbon credits and obviously the increased yield, we have seen where if you get the balance right of the reduction of nitrogen, RLEAF has the ability to increase yield. And we have seen that in the previous years where farmers were not so keen to reduce the amount of nitrogen that they use, and still, because of using RLEAF, we had an increase in yield. So that was the benefit, and it can still be. So on the farming, soil health, increased nitrogen use efficiency because whatever is released from the soil as nitrous oxide from this fertilizer is been applied. Again, that is something that we recover. Resilience and sustainability, soil health related again, regenerative agriculture, constant nitrogen supply. From an agronomic point of view, that is of great interest because when you apply nitrogen at 40, 60, 100 kilos a hectare at a time, that stresses the plant, and from scorching to too much either in the soil and the roots, it causes quite a big change. And when that nitrogen becomes available to the plant will actually expand quickly. It will grow, which means the cells will be stretched, so you are opening the potential for disease to come in. So the way we supply nitrogen, as I said, is a small amount on a daily basis, which doesn't stress the plant, and it can have a continuous growth, and it doesn't have that flush of growth and then stop because the supply has changed. So we would provide that longevity, and later we'll explain how we can even split the application, because typically we recommend T1 and T2, 1 liter at each time, but when these are close to each other, we can actually split the last application into half liter and go for T2 and T3. The return on investment, I guess that's something that is important for the farmer to understand and be able to fit it in both in an agronomic sense but also in a financial sense. So we've got to look at the reduction of fertilizer. We've done work at Imperial College, who they have a setup where we can use the photocatalyst, replicate a specific light intensity, and we put through that chamber, if you like, a specific air. Can be outdoor air, or usually we manufacture the air to replicate the outdoor condition. And then we run this for 3 hours or 5 hours. There's a nice methodology that we follow, so it's a valid methodology, and we can use the material then to be analyzed for nitrate. So we know how much nitrate we produce on a daily basis. And from that, we can say how much nitrogen we supply to the crop and what this equates if it was compared to a nitrogen application. So we're actually supplying the equivalent of 90 kilos of nitrogen over a 3-month period, given that we have applied those 2 applications of R-leaf. So from a direct saving point of view, again, that might have changed a bit, you would know better. The reduction of 20 to 30% of nitrogen, you can save approximately £10 per hectare, accounting that the farmer has paid for R-leaf, and that can be up to £40 per hectare, depending on what price you supply R-leaf, but also what is the current price. The long-term investment is soil health. If the farmers do continue to reduce the nitrogen and be consistent, and I think this is where R-leaf is key, so that it provides that confidence to the farmer to actually reduce the nitrogen and not having the fear that they're going to lose yield. There is that quality aspect as well, where we want to keep the protein up. We have seen that the R-leaf contributes to a protein increase if you don't reduce the nitrogen, and is very good at compensating the protein content where the nitrogen is reduced. But if that variety is important to have a specific nitrogen level, then again, from an agronomic point of view, it's going to be the right balance. So the carbon credits and the net zero, so carbon credits obviously an economic benefit, but also the acceptance by supermarkets that and consumers now that that benefit of the sustainability is there as well. Recommended retail price £25 per litre. That, I guess, in a serviced customer, that might be a bit higher. In a direct sale, it might be that, but we're trying to stick to that figure for many reasons. As currently the product has a huge potential. We will develop a number of projects that relate to carbon credits, so that has to be the value for the product. And I have to be clear with you, I'm a scientist turned into businessman, but the product, it has the first part, the material is expensive, you can look it up, but also processing it is quite expensive, and then you have that as a raw material, and that is formulated then into fertilizer. So it is an expensive product. It's not, it's not a huge profit locked into that. Again, the message allows to reduce synthetic fertilizer, and we're even increasing the profits either by yield or with carbon credits, which is to come, and that's the 2 aspects of it. The formulation, because we looked at the regulatory aspect, titanium dioxide is a food ingredient, it's been having recently some issues in the European Union in the nanoscale, because anything nano can be absorbed by the human being, the cells pretty much, and that is an issue. But from day one we knew that, and also, as I said, because we don't want the material to be inside the plant but on the outside, we've got a large particle that cannot penetrate through. We've done also chemical profiling of the plants that we use to make sure that we don't produce any chemicals that shouldn't be there. We've also looked at the potential of breaking down bacteria or actives, because we're putting fungicides, insecticides. So we're actually very selective at nitrous oxides, at gaseous phases, and not actives. I'm trying to answer some questions you might have. And we are also doing analysis of the end product. So we're looking at flour to make sure that there's no titanium there, because it's been phased out in the food industry. But of course, we also commissioned work with an international regulatory company, and they confirmed that there isn't any regulation that will not allow us to use titanium dioxide in farming, and that is for US, UK, and the EU. And these are pretty much the markets that we're interested in, so we haven't looked further. So what we have done to classify the formulation as an EC fertilizer is to add manganese, molybdenum, and zinc. These are elements that are typically used in cereals. We do have other formulations with different loadings, different minerals for different crops basically, but this is the formulation we use for cereals. So that's the minimum that we can add to get the formulation to an EC fertilizer. So you can take into account that the zinc, manganese has a bit of value and balance other products, but that's the main reason for doing that. Again, a message: prevent soil degradation by reducing synthetic nitrogen, providing nitrogen to the crop daily in a slow release manner, if you think of it, which prevents scorching and reduce the risk of fungal attacks compared to other nitrogens applied. The carbon credits, as I said, registering with Gold Standard, Region Network, and verified Vera. We are expecting within 4 to 5 months to have the first methodology accepted, so we can actually claim for carbon credits. Now, currently, we're working with Agrina, where we're adding R-leaf there, so that if a farmer wants to use R-leaf to reduce the nitrogen, they can actually do now and claim carbon credits for the reduction of nitrogen. Not for R-leaf yet, but for the reduction of nitrogen. And that is Agrina, and we're happy to connect you with them. And this is the first step, pretty much, that R-leaf is responsible for some carbon credits. We do have some documents that were produced, sort of introduction to carbon credits, understanding how they work, because there's a lot of information out there. There's a minefield, and yeah, we've simplified it to make sure that that's understood, and particularly in farming, to see how a farmer can benefit from that. The validation I talked about earlier, so we used a tool that's called the Climate Impact Forecast Tool, CIF. They're supported by the European Innovation Council, and we validated that 2 liters of R-leaf used per hectare in a season will actually remove 5.4 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year, and for that season. And that is important. So we are actually a technology-based removal. We're not avoiding. And avoiding is if you would do something or you change a practice and you avoid to do what you used to. And there is also adaptation, which is providing a solution that adapts to a change. So if the temperatures, for instance, go high and you adapt to that, that is also possible to get carbon credits. But this is actual removal. So we actually remove the product, and the carbon credits for this are going to be of a higher value. And sorry, I'm talking about the carbon credits quite a bit. It is to come, and that is going to change the the use of the product, if you like, is going to be increased. And the whole point of carbon credits is to increase the adoption of a technology that has a sustainability benefit. I'll skip that, I think, because again, we're getting the carbon credits because of the removal event tool. We've used the tool, we're registering for carbon credits. I've explained about also the value chains initiative that we're working with the supermarkets. There are, again, we have a document that we can share for your information, but Bayer, Syngenta, Diageo, there are some huge companies there, Nestle, that actually are part of this. So that's reality, and that's moving fast. And there's another aspect where farms, although they are not expected to be carbon neutral before they claim carbon credits, but this is something that, you know, it's not policy, but is expected, if you like, by the industry. So again, RLIF is another opportunity to just you know, provide that high number so that a farm becomes net zero, and that is also important from a supply chain point of view as well. Yeah. So how to use RLIF? Typically, tank mix, I guess typically 120 to 100 liters per hectare, which is, you know, for cereal specifically. I did say earlier T1 and T2 growth stages, 1 liter at a time, and where T1 and T2 are quite close to each other, like a couple of weeks, then we can actually split the application and put it half a liter at T2 and half a liter at T3. Now, the reason that we are also going at T1 and T2 and we don't put everything all at T1 is, as the crop is growing, where the new foliage is shading the foliage that has been sprayed. That still works, but probably reduces the efficiency because the light intensity is reduced. So that's why we have split it and we go at T1 and T2. From experimental point of view, we did a lot of trials using T0, T1, T2, T3, T4, intermediate applications, double, triple the volume, and we looking at the results and what we produce as the effect of the crop. T1 and T2 are the most appropriate applications. And of course, if you double the volume, so if you use 2 liters per hectare, you're producing more nitrogen. But then what that nitrogen does to the crop is not directly relating to the benefits. So it's not a matter of if you put 10 liters, you're going to get you know, masses of a crop. So we have worked, you know, very hard with a lot of data to get to this optimal, if you like, application.